versus DarkZero. Moving on from that, we will do W7M versus DarkZero, XSET versus Team Liquid, and CAG versus Team Liquid. We'll follow that one up. And then finally, we will have Chiefs versus BDS and Chiefs versus Astralis to round out the day. Pretty good sequence of games, wouldn't you say, Stokes?
Yeah, absolutely. Not exactly the full schedule like this A-Stream has, but the good news is we have bangers for most of the day, and it starts off extremely strong with Heroic versus DarkZero.
So let's start talking about it and exactly what we saw yesterday here. Both teams having a bit of a teeter-totter yesterday in terms of the outcomes of their results. DarkZero able to take a very impressive 8-7 win, if I remember the score correctly, versus G2. And then aside from that as well, dropped the match somewhat surprisingly versus W7M later on in the day, and not necessarily too close of an affair.
It was a little bit of a misfire there, it seemed, for DarkZero, but hopefully they can right their wrongs here today. Heroic have not exactly had an easy way through this either, dropping a game yesterday, but able to pick up the pieces and at least claim some points, but looking to start their day off strong up against their North American competition.
Talking specifically about Heroic and kind of what we got out of them yesterday too. Bit of a, very much like DarkZero, just kind of the other way around. Bit of a disappointing start to them as they unfortunately were trounced by G2 in their initial matchup, but then were able to rebound a little bit better versus the W7M players. Things looking good there. And then of course, you know, being led by the famous or infamous, depending on your opinion on him, Mr. Officer, of course, has brought some new energy to this team and seemingly has really brought them to the forefront now of the European side of Siege, looking to really prove themselves for the first time on international soil for quite a few of these players. There is, of course, one exception to that. We'll be talking more about him in a few moments.
Yeah, absolutely the case. And, you know, some pretty interesting stuff for Heroic. It's really nice to actually have them here and get to experience this team out of Europe, especially for how dominant they've been inside of their region, especially with some of these younger players coming in like Sloth, who has just been so dominant. So, I mean, it's going to be a pretty interesting matchup, especially with how Hyper was playing yesterday. I think it's going to be, you know, quite a few shots sent back and forth.
Well, like we were hinting to a few seconds ago, this is a roster of relatively new players on Heroic, but there's one player with an absolute plethora of experience, Unameister, and we've got a nice feature about him, so let's take a look at that.
Uno there, the guy, he's really relaxed. He's the sort of guy who brings a good mentality to the team.
Uno with another tap fire kill. Planned out. Uno pushes in another kill for him, a free K.
Uno with one, Uno with two, and the third one will go down. Uno, the newcomer.
Uno with a TK preventing the diffuser going down. That could be a big mistake.
When I watched Uno play Thatcher, it was not a great showing at all.
Yes.
And in fact, he had to use all of them
G2
on
had
one
never
ball.
lost a single game versus North American team.
Speaking of mind-blowing, Heroic.
Uno is now on the team.
Uno takes one against G2. Obviously, his old teammates there.
Almost got away with it, but Uno with a shotgun kill.
Heroic continuing to fight to keep a hold of that top spot.
Let them talk. I'll just play.
And play he will, back once again on major soil. Uno is back, ladies and gentlemen. One of the most historic names in European Siege, resurging once again, looking to try and lift another major trophy. Will he do it with this new jersey for Heroic, previously with G2 on one of the most famous rosters in Siege history? Definitely a historic run for him and looking to do so once again.
Absolutely. It's fantastic to have Uno back, especially with how they've been performing within recent history, just like we were talking about inside of their dominance for Europe. But they also had a pretty good game against W7M yesterday, which we'll see them a little bit later on up against DarkZero. In fact, right after this matchup, but just to let you guys know a little bit of what happened yesterday if you weren't completely caught up with us, Gorgana and Grizzly decided to show up and have a heck of a day up against our LATAM squad with a 13-7 for Gorgana and Grizzly with a 9-6, a cost of 100% as well for him, and a KPR of a 1.3 for Gorgana on top of that. A insane performance from both of them to shut it out in a 7-3 fashion.
Yeah, Gorgana really showcasing that dominance inside of that early to mid-round portion. Not a whole lot inside of the entry department from him inside of that specific game, which I was expecting to see a little bit more of. Usually he's on the fence at least, going to be that bunker player, the one that's set up somewhere extended out from the site and looking to waste as much time as possible. Not really a lot of those kind kind of early round engagements going his way, but still absolutely proficient inside of his roles. We see the fragging performance carrying through and still able to waste a boatload of time over the course of that half as well. Things on the attacking side were a little bit more mixed, but still there's chance for redemption here today. Meanwhile, on the side of DarkZero, dealing with some similar things as we saw them start their tournament runoff beautifully with an upset victory versus G2, going the full distance at 8-7 with some fantastic performances coming out, most notably from Hyper inside of that matchup.
Yeah, oh my goodness, Hyper was playing just completely out of his mind during that game, especially with the way that the game actually closed out. If you guys didn't see the clip yesterday, he has an ace at the very end of the game and just completely pulls the rug out from under G2. DarkZero, a team that I think, even for a lot of the NA talent, wasn't exactly a blip on their radar, but they've definitely came here and made some waves.
Some very slow buildups of consistency, I think, over the past few months is what we've been seeing more and more from DarkZero. This is a team that I didn't have a whole lot of confidence behind at their first major appearance with this roster, mainly with Canadian having joined up with them towards the end of last year. That would have been during the Sweden major. Things just didn't really end up going too well there. But aside from, oh yeah, look, it looks like we do have it, ladies and gentlemen. We got told about this before too, and we now have it. We do have a nice announcement to make. It is someone's birthday today.
Oh, do you want to say? Oh, okay. Well, guys, it's Paul's birthday today. It's Hyper's birthday, everybody. A year older. Another trip around the sun for him, and I believe we do indeed have a cake for him here today.
Yep, so we're going to be bringing that in just a second, letting them celebrate here for a second. We saw it off in the corner a second ago, so I know they're going to want to bring that in. We'll keep talking about this team in the meanwhile. Hyper, of course, kind of the highlight for yesterday. And here it is, ladies and gentlemen. A nice cake for the birthday boy. Make a wish, blow it out. I wonder what he wished for.
Probably a dub, I would say. I mean, you're at a major event. He's like, I want a trophy. I want something. I mean, if you're going to just give me another arm sleeve or a mouse, I mean, I can just get that myself, you know? But happy birthday to Hyper, and hopefully he's got some good gifts coming in these two next matchups.
Yeah, once again, happy birthday to Hyper, and hopefully some good games in the future for you both today and throughout the rest of this tournament. But back on topic, DZ has been slowly building up their strength over the past few months here, and has been showing themselves to be more and more of a force to be reckoned with inside of North America. And this is despite the fact and the opinion that some people have as well, myself included, that their playstyle doesn't necessarily match the meta at the moment too, leading to some problems for them in-game where they tend to play a little bit too slowly, may not be able to keep up with the more aggressive tendencies that are currently leaning into the way that teams play, but still, they're able to keep up in a lot of situations here. So it's been very interesting to watch them compared to a lot of the other teams.
Yeah, I'd have to completely agree with you. You know, it feels like DZ is a little lackadaisical sometimes, just trying to figure out exactly what they want to do with their next, position. That's really what it feels like a lot for me.
Cautious team.
Yeah, it feels like they do a lot of jiving for position early on, which is completely fine, but it also feels like they try to build off of, what Canadian wants to do inside of the round as well for him. And as you guys know, he is indeed the IGL, so he's making a lot of these calls and making a lot of these plays, which is what we actually saw from him yesterday. Had a really big 3K round off some of his calls as well. So, I mean, it's definitely a game that could go either way, but for both of us, more than likely, I won't speak for you, but at least for myself, I definitely think that the pacing needs to just be a little bit faster up against a team like Heroic here today.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the vetoes are prepared. The teams have decided on a map, so let's see where this one is going to break down towards here. We'll start throwing them up, as that is going to be a ban of Skyscraper initially here from DarkZero. Following that up, Oregon going to get knocked out by the Heroic roster. We can just rattle down through these pretty quickly, too, so we'll see what else is going to get knocked out. No surprises so far here. It is interesting to note yesterday that DZ was perfectly fine to flirt with more maps that they hadn't necessarily played into. Makes sense, obviously, it's a major, so you tend to see teams bring in a few new maps. Unfortunately for DZ, when they played Chalet, a map they hadn't played prior to yesterday in quite some time against W7M, that didn't go too well. So, big question now as to whether they want to potentially take a risk again today, and it's not necessarily looking like it as we come down to Porter at the end of it. Very interesting, though, that DZ was still okay to leave Chalet in the map pool despite the results versus W7M yesterday. They left it up to Heroic, and thankfully for them, probably Heroic chooses not to go into that and instead goes over towards Border.
Well, something's got to give for one of these teams because both of them have a 100% win rate in recent history on Border, but they both have one play as well. So could see some new strategy coming out from some of these squads, and it's going to be a banger of a match, especially on a map like Border. It's very tight-knit. You're going to have those close quarters battles. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, keep in mind it's still a new map as far as the rotation is concerned. Obviously, the players, you know,
huge quotations around new.
They've obviously been playing it for years at this point, and the changes that were made to it while it was out of the comp pool were relatively minor in scope for the most part. So considering that, players are still going to be very familiar with it, but it has been out of rotation for some time.
Absolutely.
So the strat book needs to be somewhat recreated for teams as they bring it back in.
Yeah, they just made it to where there's a little bit more room. If you guys were back with us in the day of Year 1, Season 3, all the way back on Dustline right after Black Ice, which has changed a lot, let me tell you. I was 18 years old, now I'm 25, I get called an old man in ranked lobbies. It's really weird, but, you know, it is what it is. Fortunately enough, though, we have the match ready for you guys, and we'll get into the ban phase now. Heroic will be taking care of the first offensive ban, as they will be starting off on defense.
Let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen, and see who will top out our first game of the day. Should be important to note that DZ needs to brace themselves. They got a doubleheader here right now. They need to get ready to play against W7M rematch versus them immediately afterwards. So we'll talk about that in a bit. Interesting initial ban, though, coming in as Osa is actually going to be knocked out first. Don't believe I've seen her banned before, at least not in international competitions. That's going to be a first. Second one makes perfect sense, though, as Thatcher has been the pick of the litter for quite some time.
I will actually remind you of the last time we saw an Osa ban. It was actually not Chalet, it was Coastline at SI 2022.
It's true, yeah.
Because Osa was so good at taking control of Aqua and making it to where plants were super easy around that billiards table. So, and that's more than likely why we're going to see her banned here as well, as Osa does really, really well, whether it be, you know, setting up just outside of a breach or making it to where a plant spot that's a little risque can potentially be something that you can actually stick and hopefully find your team around. But past that, all of these bans making too much sense. The Thatcher, Mira, and the Kaid coming through. Obviously, the Kaid, the counter there to the Thatcher ban coming through. Got to make sure he's off the board so you can't lock up these walls for free and make it overly complex for the offense to try and get rid of.
All right, so let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen, and see what exactly these teams will be able to bust out inside of the first few rounds of play. DarkZero on the attacking side here. Not going to throw any surprises in their initial pick phase, and for the most part, you can say the same about the defense. We do, of course, have that Echo pick coming in, which is going to be fun to pay attention to, but we've seen him be able to kind of sneak his way in from time to time if teams feel that he's going to be useful for their method, especially considering the amount of visual clutter on the roof of this site, too. Probably a good chance you can sneak one of those yokai drones into a corner and leave it unnoticed, and it's just a good piece of insurance more than anything if your team is going to end up getting pushed out from that main balcony wall, leaving you with not a whole lot of options for retakes.
Yeah, it makes things quite difficult, but as you can see, Heroic, they're not just focused on the site, and that's exactly what you expect out of a lot of teams for the defensive end of Border. They're going to try and hold on to this entire map. This is what we saw from Team 1 yesterday in their matchup, and they did a pretty bang-up job of shutting down Direwolves and making things really, really difficult, even just from the jump. Just trying to get off the balconies and into an initial room of the map was way too complicated. They continually lost bodies, and the overall aggression that we saw from Team 1 boded extremely well. Will Heroic wear a similar hat?
So still a bit of reconstruction being done here by Heroic as they move themselves into it, but for Uno and the rest of this squad, they are more than prepared for the action coming in from DZ. Eclipse is going to be the first to try and work his way in, more so just setting up the utility more than anything at this point, though, to prevent any aggressive runouts from Heroic. It seems like DZ possibly expecting that. And of course, DZ, as we talked about in our pregame, is that kind of slow-playing team. We do have a build-up over here towards the jail position, and of course, we saw a breach on the inside of it, so some counterplay maybe being mounted at the moment here as they try to get an open. Nitro is out, but it's going to go a little bit too far, unfortunately. More importantly, the players from DarkZero are able to get out of the way of it, so no damage connecting there, although it was very scary for a second.
Oh, and the other thing past that is look at the amount of utility DarkZero's already used. I mean, it's just detention. They used frag grenades as well as a decent amount of their stuns as well, but fortunately enough, Hyper should still have some concussions and things on hand with his lifeline, but past that, Heroic still have this entire defensive setup to be able to abuse upstairs. I mean, even to the point where they're confident with having this entire wall actually soft for box. So DarkZero are going to have some lines of sight to be able to abuse, but this overall defensive setup might run a mockery of things.
Benjamaster being spotted out and to some extent hunted right now as he goes over towards the east main staircase here, waiting for someone to potentially try and peek him from that primary doorway. It's a little bit premature for this right now, but he does catch the player by the window. Doesn't want the challenge, though. He knows the time is already relatively low, so he doesn't necessarily need to take this 50-50 fight. Better to back away from it, try to recenter it. And unfortunately, still going to continue to get spotted out here, but his team has managed to scavenge, it looks like. I don't know, just visual bug theirs. DarkZero still work their way forward with their own drones to continue to clear out most of this setup. For NJR and the rest of the squad, though, time is starting to get a little bit low, but as we we said, this is how we expect DZ to play. They flourish in these low-time scenarios, just trying to hunt down a player here from Heroic slowly but surely. And if they can get even that little +1 advantage, we saw in matches yesterday how much of a difference that can make. But Gorgona turns it around through the floorboards and takes out NJR instead, giving the opening kill over to Heroic. And this is exactly what I was talking about with Gorgona. His ability to waste time is fantastic as he picks up a second now, a third on the docket as he tries to go around the corner. But at the moment, he's worried about stopping this hard breach, shutting it down. And now Uno Meister will be able to jump into the fray too as he knocks out Eclipse.
Well, it's going to be a downed Jaeger and possibly a dead Pamba, but no, a nice flick, and he'll take out Sloth as well. This is technically doable, but very minimal time here and going to require a lot of heavy lifting from DarkZero. Hyper will be across the field over inside of Fountain, trying to take any gunfight he potentially can inside of Archive. Pambazu will eventually go down, does not have an adrenal surge to be able to assist himself in getting back up. In the very first round will go to Heroic off the back of a very straightforward setup, mostly in the sense of the way that they played it out. I wouldn't say in the sense of, you know, how DarkZero were able to break things down. Definitely quite a few different facets being held there, CCTV, Fountain, everything else in between, but DarkZero just spending a lot of time on trying to clear out some of these initial areas, but it just was all for naught. They put the buck downstairs inside of Customs, try and get control of CCTV, but it's all just pure punishment. They don't have anybody trying to influence this fight over top for Gorgana. It's simply NJR just trying to fight him from down low, and that's basically a coin flip. It's a 50-50 unless the buck does something quite magical. Maybe he tags him up with a skeleton key initially or something like that. He's able to down him, but as we saw, Gorgana got away with way too much in that position for how many DZ bodies were in the area.
It's the same for when they try to clear out Benja too. They spend a good 30+ seconds trying to drone him out and get him into a position where they would have been able to take him down from outside on the catwalks, and just nothing comes of it. He just gives no respect to it. He's like, all right, I'm just going to leave. And backs away from that. So DarkZero wastes a lot of drone presence and time trying to fulfill that, and then the same thing is done later on in the round, as you were just mentioning, with Gorgona, leading to that desperate situation at the end where they just had to try and push the envelope. Unfortunately, at a player deficit at that point due to what they lost, taking out Gorgona.
Attackers are moving out to locate a bomb and defuse it.
Well, with that being said, my friend, round 2 is with us. As we'll start things off here, DZ won't be changing things up all too much. The buck will be out of play, though, bringing some extra soft breach in its place for NJR. Also have the Finka along for the ride. Canadian will be on the Yana this time around, and obviously we still have the hard breachers to assist with getting some of these walls. I believe it all starts with the tension, if I know my walls correctly, and yes, I do, so there we go. So I'll be able to get rid of that with his initial impact, but I do believe that they only have one more, and they do. So Eclipse will set it up again, and that will actually not be it, unfortunately enough for Slots. Sometimes those impacts just do not work out, not close enough to the exothermic charge of Eclipse to be able to destroy it.
Grizzly waiting for his first chance to frag out here. More than anything, deny drone presence. This is now Gorgona hiding out on the inside of the security position here, giving him more of that presence to play into. Away from that for Heroic here, continuing to waste this out. Time that is. DarkZero continue to play their own style of slow-paced play, and it continues to work for them too. This time a much cleaner opening kill, catching the Jaeger, obviously now in the hands of Grizzly, with Gorgona changing over to the Malusi. He'll still have the majority of the ADSs supporting him on the inside here, but the early loss of Grizzly certainly not going to help the Heroic roster. Benja trying to jump out for a little bit of a free fire there, but he's a bit late to the party, unfortunately. That player is coming from the other side and is not going to be accessible with that barricade up.
But halfway through the round now, unfortunately enough, DZ, although it is a slow burn, they've gotten their initial frag, and this is something they've been quite dominant with throughout the NAL, and for them that they're more than likely excited to be able to show here inside of round 2. Gonna be a lot of cross angles here, just trying to see if they can get any Heroic member to slip up. NJR's found some space here inside of Server, but it's just gonna take Canadian to swing on to Sloth, who is a little bit mispositioned at the bottom of Metal, making it pretty easy for DZ to pick him off, and this is starting to look more and more like a potential site plant, but they have to worry about this verticality. Gorgana's still up here with another member of Heroic. They could try and drop in, but that's more than likely ill-advised. Really want to try and abuse verticality up here if there is any angle set up to try and support that. Gorgana, speaking of angles, has to deal with the angle all the way towards top east, but that's going to guarantee the plant for DarkZero. Heroic will pick up their first frag, but it's going into the post plant.
Yeah, still down to a 3v4, and look at Gorgona's HP as well. Just a tiny little sliver remaining. One bullet, and he is dead completely. Benja, though, sneaking in through the back. He might have a chance to do some real impact here, but look at DarkZero's post-plant positions. They are so strong. Uno's already been isolated out. He goes down. Benja, he's going to have to make a run out through the jail wall to get anything done here, too. Canadian has already shut down the other player trying to rotate back in. Gorgona will waltz right up and get a relatively easy kill on NJR, but Canadian, thankfully, has his teammates back post-mortem and is going to be able to trade that out relatively relatively quickly to give DZ a very straightforward round of their own.
Yeah, very well done from DarkZero. They get that initial pick, and then they immediately start breaking things up on site, set NJR over towards the far side of the map, and have him start working towards customs as well as vents, flushing a decent amount of the heroic players out of the area. But, I mean, it was a little bit easier for them on that main floor as well, as there really wasn't anyone playing around like the server or workshop area, so he was just practically allowed to walk in via square, as the rest of the heroic members are mostly centralized around CCTV upstairs with a little bit of tidbits downstairs inside of customs. But as we saw, DarkZero did a bang-up job of clearing that out because of those counter angles and cutoffs coming through, making it very, very difficult for the poor Maestro to try and swing on anybody.
Unfortunately, on top of that, too, Gorgona really wasn't able to bring as much presence as I think he would have liked to have been able to do from those top-down angles that were set up inside of security there, just not really slowing down DZ, and they didn't honestly need to pay much mind to it. You mentioned, of course, in the post-plant, they started having to watch out for it, but that was really only the first time it truly became a threat for DZ, and thankfully, they had already backed away from the site and had some pretty strong post-plant positions by that point. So Heroic might need to take another look at that custom setup should it come up again later in the half. But for now, they are going to switch away from it and go over towards Tellers. We will still see some extended pressure, of course, you guys can see before you, not inside of those CCTV and that customs area. But still, it will mainly be just an extension here to waste time and hopefully give them an extra kill or two.
Yeah, this is something that you're going to see time and time again on this map, no matter what the site is, just given how small the map is. Yeah, you can try and centralize yourself over the top end, but if you're able to deny map control across the board, that's just going to bode better for you here on a map like Border. So drones out now for DZ, specifically for NJR in the current moment, as he'll be looking into CCTV and more or less looking into Gorgona's soul currently, as he's at the back of Horseshoe, has a deployable shield here to assist himself with the CCTV window, has to worry about the break room door as well, but he's been here before, so shouldn't be too much for him to manage.
So it was all quiet here after the first minute has expired. Panba still hunting for a first potential target. Was able to lock it down in the previous round, and it's certainly going to look to do so again here as he encroaches on that security territory where we know we've got at least one player from Heroic looking to waste time, potentially a second one supporting that one as well, to try and maximize the negative impact against DZ's push here. But so far, Gorgona not really able to pull off a whole lot. You saw that peek there, immediately gets hit by a bullet, so going to have second thoughts about that, but unfortunately the pressure is going to continue to barrel down against him. So now the window player's creeping up as well. He'll hear that audio cue. Look, again, tries to peek out and immediately pays the price for it. Gorgona really just locked down right now inside of security. Can't do much.
Well, he's got Benja here, which means he needs to play time. You want to see Gorgona hold on to his life as long as he's able to, as DarkZero are wasting so much time on this top floor. I want to remind everyone at home, the site is actually Tellers. Heroic is completely on the west-hand side of the map at the current moment. They still have the verticality to drop back into sight, but Gorgona has wasted so much time, and now Benja has a kill. Pambazu will be able to trade it out. NJR with a big pickup from the nade, but with a minute remaining, are they able to break the back of this defensive setup?
Uno will fall back into the site now, playing into the backside of the bathrooms here, but Panba's rampage continues. He's able to knock out Sloth, bring it down to just Uno and Grizzly to clutch this out in a 2v4. 45 seconds, so they can try to waste out the time here, but once more, DZ seems to be set up here. They are locked in on all these rotates. Unomeister trying to creep up. He knows he's got a drone somewhere in front of him too, so he's watching out for that. Grizzly having some better luck defending the site from further back, though. He's going to be able to strike back against Hyper, eliminating him, so a bit of a slow start here today for Hyper at 0-3. We saw him be a big proponent of this team inside of both the NAL stage and, of course, one of the earlier matches for DZ where they took down G2. Uno will miss the opportunity on that cross, though, so the plant will begin to go down. That's going to spur Grizzly into action, gets a player off the defuse, and with that, that's going to prompt us into our last two gunfights, where once again, DZ cleans up. Someone as expected here, just needed to get them towards that endpoint.
Yeah, very well done from DarkZero. Cool, calm, and collected, and hitting the site like they need to. Get things cleared out, force the hand of Heroic. Some bad moves there as we see. There's no bullets being able to be landed by the Alibi MX4 Storm, just not able to get it done, sadly, in that situation, and really nothing there for the Vigil either at the end of the day. Yeah, Benja's able to get that initial kill, and some very serious time bank soaked up via that CCTV setup, but if you're not able to really, do anything off the back of that, then, well, it doesn't really mean anything at the end of the day, does it? Heroic's defensive end, the actual defensive setup, eventually breaks down. DarkZero get the round and launch us into round 4.
All right, let's take a look here and see what exactly DarkZero will continue to deploy towards this Heroic. Finally going to be able to fall back onto that upstairs hold, which worked out well for them at the beginning of this matchup. Unfortunately, things have not worked out for them aside from that. So gambling on this one here. We'll see if DZ was able to correct their own mistakes, and we'll be able to find a better way to insert themselves into the southern part of the building to knock out this extension over on the catwalk as well as the CCTV area, where DarkZero had to unfortunately waste the first 2 minutes or so of time, still unsuccessfully clearing out those players after that time had expired as well. And with Gorgona picking up the 2-for-1 exchange, it really hampered DarkZero's capability to force their way into the site as they had no choice with about 30 seconds left there.
Absolutely the case. Some shots back and forth between the DZ and Heroic members. Gorgona will be on a forward position here and has an attempt to try and kill the Valley player. Pambazoo seemingly aware of those. This is one of the most common peaks on this map. You can see him working for the break room door here as well. Thankfully, they made those AC units outside a little bit taller, John, so you got some more cover to play around there. You don't just have to prone on the ground and pray to God that you don't get tagged up by somebody. But either way, Gorgona will be able to at least deny this for a little while longer. Hyper with almost a fantastic play there, just on the tip of Gorgona's head, and that could have been it, but fortunately enough for Heroic, he won't go down just yet.
Grizzly already re-rotating his way back up towards the site here. DarkZero with a good overwatch from Canadian's drone is going to find out the Benja thankfully is not messing around with things over towards the catwalk this time. That doesn't mean, of course, there's no threat to these guys as they try to work their way in through east side. So Banba will take the mantle first up here, but immediately gets resistance from the break room cross here. The soft wall. Looks like Gorgona, the one that's going to throw those shots back against it. But Gorgona's got bigger problems to worry about, a bit closer to home here, especially now that he's been spotted out by that drone. The window's open too, so he has to be careful with the way he hangs around this corner. He'll fall back into it. Doesn't even catch that player on rappel initially until he's shot at, so we'll have to watch out for it now. Thankfully, Sloth is coming to support him. Is going to take some of the pressure off by eliminating Eclipse a bit closer to east, but still, that rappel is a bit too much to deal with, and NJR will take him out. Benja able to exchange once again, though, so Heroic are still holding on, despite the kills being picked up by DZ.
Yeah, patience is a virtue, and it works out extremely well for Gorgona, as he'll initially be able to get the frag, or rather NJR will be able to get the frag there and take out Gorgona on that CCTV window. But as you said, the trade comes back, and they'll be able to pick up Pambazoo. That's going to be the Finka off the board. No more adrenal surges to influence the situation. And with 1 minute remaining, DarkZero have got to hightail it towards site. They've got the case down outside the main door as of right now. Grizzly on kind of a cheeky position, one that got nerfed a little bit here for Border in the fix as they added some boxes up there so you can't play as far back on top of the server, but still a pretty cheeky angle if you're able to catch somebody walking in through the box door. And speaking of the box door, this is where NJR is going to be playing right around the lockers area. Potential nitro cell from underneath from Uno. Could be in the wings. We'll see how it lands, and it's actually going to be from behind. Hyper with his initial frag will save the life of his teammate, but NJR will also go down. Canadian sneaks inside a vent. He'll be able to pick up one. That's the equalizer right here, but we still need to get this case down, and in fact, it's on Canadian. Grizzly trying to find some space, but a misstep. Canadian rats out as he just lays on the ground, able to get the frag, and now Sloth with the potential to actually shut this round down as he fries NJR. He can't find the elbow of the other player, but Hyper will finally shut that down as well. It's a 2K for Hyper, and what a round for DZ.
Sloth, a near clutch coming out from him, though. Very impressive performance, even though it doesn't pan out, but at the same time, DZ really asserting their control over this attacking side here, taking another downstairs hold. To correct myself, obviously, I did mention that it was probably going back upstairs, but that was not the case, so Heroic now needing to potentially take a step back here, think about how they want to approach things. They will call for a pause on the outset of our 5th round and figure out what exactly they need to change up here, how they can throw their aggression at DZ more efficiently in order to slow them down or just make these late round gunfights a bit more palatable, because aside from the first round, they have failed outright in this department.
Yeah, DarkZero are looking very dominant inside of their openers. I think they're doing a very good job of calculating things with their intel game, you know, especially with Canadian. And we were talking about before the match how Canadian can really make some plays for himself in some of these calls, and that's exactly what we saw inside of that last round. He sneaks inside a vent, he sees the entire play for himself, and is able to get so much done for DarkZero, all of the back of his teammates inside of that early game, getting those initial frags and making it quite difficult for Heroic to try and fend off the remainder of DarkZero's push. And well, done quite well. Canadian wearing a multitude of hats in this situation and able to frag, able to call, able to do it all at the end of the day. Armory Lockers, though, is going to be the next site here for Heroic. This tactical timeout might be a little bit longer, just to let you guys know. You can already see the mic is up for Mr. Officer. That's because Heroic could hear their coach the entire time. DarkZero could not, so they're going to get that fixed up, and then obviously DZ will be able to talk for the allotted amount of time that coaches have, and then we'll be back into the match. But John, how are you feeling about DarkZero and their current dominance inside of this opener? It feels like their pacing is really strong, especially after the first round. It was a little lackadaisical, a little slow, but they've definitely picked up the pace.
I mean, that's DarkZero, right? Slow play on the attacking side. That's kind of how they do. I'm not a huge fan of it, just because it's like it's such a slow build-up every single time, but it works. Right? So
I'll say this. It almost feels like they're an FGC player, right? It's like, all right, I'm gonna use my first set. I'm gonna use my first set, and we're gonna kind of just play some footsies. We're gonna feel you out. That's really what DarkZero are about. And as soon as Canadian has the understanding of his opponent, he's like, all right, let's play the game. You know, it's honestly very interesting, and I really like the style of call that we're seeing here at LAN. This is something that I've always appreciated Canadian for throughout the history of Rainbow Six, and we're seeing it yet here again on display.
DarkZero is like you know, like how every video game has like that one part where like the walls are like closing and opening, and you have to like wait for like that perfect opportunity to run right through them and not have to stop in the middle.
You have no idea how much Crash
DarkZero
Bandicoot
is the team that waits for that opportunity, basically.
Oh, so they're not me, and it's like, I have 17
they don't
lives.
go to like that halfway checkpoint, that little alcove you can go on the side, then not get smashed. Like, nah, I'm doing this whole thing, and then they make it up by like 2 inches. Like,
yeah, they're like you playing Mario in 64 for the first time, and then you hand it to a speedrunner, and they're like, all right, well, like it's the completely night and day difference. But
to talk more like specifically in game, like just huge abuse of the drone mechanics, making sure they have every single point of intelligence possible.
And also they abandoned the buck early as well, because they're like, yeah, it's just not going to work for this current position. It's been really well done, especially with the patience that we saw from NJR inside that last round of Gorgona.
Yeah, so DZ really using the full breadth of the toolkit they are given inside of Siege here. And it just oftentimes takes a little bit for them to execute into it. Get some replays going for you guys here too, as we're now getting ready to jump back in. The prep phase has already begun for the 5th round. You guys will be seeing that in just a moment here. Take a look and see if we got any interesting picks. And it's not looking like things have changed up too drastically for the most part. Benja is going to bring a Wamai into the fold instead of the Jaeger they were previously using, giving them a little bit more mobility, as well as versatility with their utility mitigation here. Obviously, just having the capability to throw like 7 or 8 of those magnets throughout the round is going to be a bit more flexible compared to the 3 ADSs, which are a bit cumbersome to move in the mid-round as well.
Yes, indeed. Although with the ADSs, you do have better opportunity to claim a multitude of things from the offense. That's the big caveat to that. But the big thing for Wamai is not only is he a counter to Capital, the only one that actually exists in the game, but as John was saying, he gets those discs over time, so we can continue to apply those where needed. So we should see that throughout the rest of round 5. Gorgona will be on Valkyrie this time around. An amazing character when it comes to Siege. One of my favorites, and I'm sure a lot of favorites of people at home. But unfortunately enough for Heroic, theirs is going to die pretty early on. Eclipse with a pretty heads-up play, very aware that there could be some aggressive swings coming out from the balcony, and he's surely correct.
It's the opposite, unfortunately, for Gorgona. He misses the note on Eclipse there entirely, so he's not going to be able to respond to that 0 damage going back onto him. Canadian, of course, going to be zooming around with this Twitch turn, knocking out a few of the default cams, so no trouble with that. Benja now going to be thrown into the hot seat, though, as he's lone holding this position inside of CCTV. It becomes incredibly more important, as Stokes talked about before. This is the extension point that everyone plays into on this map, and especially with us now confirming the fact that we are on an upstairs hold. Nice find from Benj there. Catches the Twitch drone just when Canadian had gone off of it, so that will remove that piece of utility. Not necessarily why Canadian's gone for it, but either way, Benja able to survive and thrive, despite the fact that he's got that drone you guys just saw on top of him there. Able to pick up another kill for himself, equalizing things out into the 4v4 and making up for earlier, but this nade is going to force him out, and he's not able to get the kill. Panda baits out his opponent, hook, line, and sinker, and Benja will now falter, giving the advantage back to DZ.
A lot of solid nade mechanics coming out here from DarkZero. An uncooked grenade provokes the Heroic player to make a misplay, and that's exactly what happens. I mean, you got to give him the benefit of the doubt there. As soon as you see that red indicator, I mean, I'm sure everybody's heart stops. Exactly, and we saw that yesterday, which I can't remember which team it was, but as simple as, you know, bouncing an uncooked grenade off of a door just to hold space there for some time because they don't know when it's essentially going to go off. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways you're able to abuse those. And speaking of abuse, DarkZero practically beating down Heroic at the current moment. It's going to be another frag for them as they pull ahead by 2 bodies.
Yeah, unfortunately, Heroic is far too detached on this specific round right now.
No refrag capability at the current moment.
Every single kill has just been a lone player just chilling on their own. Like, for Gorgona and Benja, it kind of makes sense because Gorgona misplayed at the beginning and then that just, as a result, left Benja on his own. But Grizzly going down as well with no refrag capability. That's where things are starting to get a little bit ridiculous in this department.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can just tell from that across the board here for their kill feed. I mean, there's no one really that's even above 5 at the current moment. Most kills is Benja at 4, and everybody else is really just trying to pick up the pieces. Heroic, worse for wear. Uno's going to drop down the hatch as Mini no longer safe after NJR destroys the wall, and now the plant more than likely coming in soon. That's going to be on Eclipse. Where is it going to go down? It's going for the half wall here. They're going to be able to find him. He's going to bailiff this out. Won't be able to find him after he makes the move, though. Some pre-fires through. Pambo will take down Sloth, and they know exactly where Uno is, and they've already shut it down? Question mark? I thought they had it there for a split second, but apparently we wanted to reload in the hallway instead, Canadian. Not exactly the best idea you've ever had, but you're more than likely going to win the round anyways, so who really cares?
Yeah, Uno just pre-firing every which way he can right now, and he actually nearly got Panva a few seconds ago too. Panva's out of adrenal surges, so he's not going to be able to boost himself up at all here. Thankfully, Eclipse and NJR are well in post-plant positions at this point, so there you go. Just a matter of waiting for us to build up to that point as Eclipse will have the cross to shut him down. That unfortunately, Uno is not going to be expecting. And again, losing that round pretty much for the reasons we talked about earlier in the round. They're just losing far too many players earlier on in the round with pretty much zero capability to refrag, and as a result of that, it's a straightforward push from DZ into the site, with them having that massive advantage.
All right, well, DZ continue to trot ahead in a pretty convincing fashion for their offensive side here on Border, and they've got to be happy as a clam when it comes to this map selection because they are taking it to Heroic at the current moment. Now, the big thing about Heroic, just to remind you guys, a lot of these players are quite young and honestly don't have that much international competition under their belt, so this is a situation that is even more intense for them. You always got to think about the mental strain when it comes to situations like this. These guys are on a grand stage in front of all you ladies and gentlemen at home and definitely can put a pretty strenuous situation to its absolute max. So hopefully they start to feel themselves here soon and can light a fire because as of right now, not even Uno can get too much done.
So Thoreau continuing to struggle. Pay close attention to what they're going to try and pull off here, especially inside of the first minute and a half of play, because that's where they've run into the most issues here. Definitely showing some capability to refrag or just frag out in general when it comes to the site play, but oftentimes losing far too many of their extended players, whether that's Gorgona, Benja, or someone else, leaving them really with a shell of their former defense and just not enough player prowess to be able to fight off what is usually the greater strength coming in from DZ. DZ, of course, needing to slowly build up to that, so if Heroic can find a way, like they did on round 1, to just deny those entries entirely or that map control, then things are going to still build up to a much better round for Heroic, but they've been unable to do that ever since the changes were made after the first round from DZ.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that frag grenade actually ended up falling on the far side of that little silver sheet there, and since there's like a little lip on it, a lot of the fragmentation was caught up by that, not destroying the mute jammer. So very unfortunate circumstances there for DarkZero. They'll trade damage back and forth between Gorgona and NJR, but past that, not too much to talk about at the current moment, just jiving for position. Canadian does have Flores in for this one, so we'll see these Rotero drones finally get some use here, which is going to be really strong just given the circumstances of how Heroic has been playing out the map. They really like to try and make these defensive standpoints and stick to their guns around deployable shields and everything else in between, and that's a direct counter right there.
So first half of the round nearly gone. Obviously having that bit of a scary fight between Gorgona and NJR. No true winner resulting from it, however. Except for the fact that NJR is still going to be boostable back up to a pretty healthy amount of HP, so he will end up with the better of the two health pools once they back away from each other. Aside from that, though, Benja's still wasting time inside of break room. More than likely, Gorgona's still somewhere nearby, also with the capability to refrag if the need should arise in there. He is a little bit further down 90 with a quick rotate to the inside of security. Also with those down angles, too, if he wants to try and see what's going on inside of the jail area. Oh, that's a nice position of a magnet right there. Is going to eat up one of those lifelines. No one from the DarkZero side sees it, so second time, DarkZero has unfortunately missed out on a piece of utility this round. This could start to build up towards something a bit more troublesome in the late round if they're going to continue to struggle with it. But let's see now as Benj is being tested, and he will ace it as he shuts down Canadian. First off here inside of the round. Only a minute left too, so this is Heroic finally wasting that time, playing a much more patient game, just waiting out the pushes from DZ, and it's yielding massive results. And Jared's been able to trade that back though. He finds Gorgona over by the metal stairs, so the position now a bit more exposed here from Benja. Let's be careful about how he plays out the rest of this round, but it seems like he's been able to fall back into the hallway, and they don't have a good lock on where he's playing from.
Nice.
Yo, Panba with the denial instead against Benja, shuts him down, and DZ still in this fight, unfortunately with not a lot of time to play with, however.
Yeah, good news is, though, is that they have Panba up and ready with this LMG. 73 bullets still inside of this magazine. He'll be able to attempt to mow down as many Heroic members as he could potentially find. NJR will start breaking up the wall as Bambazu will actually go down to Uno, but a nice move here from Eclipse. What else would you expect out of this man? The plant now going down inside of Mini. NJR with the overwatch here, but potentially 0 Heroic members aware of this. They try and play it out with the Yokai. Not enough damage here from Uno, and he's been read out. He's trying to win this with a bailiff, folks. Peeking back and forth. He's getting some good damage off, but they're eventually going to have to reload. Sloth is going to take some damage from downstairs, and he knows that Eclipse has to try and hightail it back up. He will not have the opportunity to try and pick Uno back up, so this is indeed a 1 versus 1. Eclipse will take him down via the wall in the other room here and be able to pick up Sloth as well. Fairly straightforward affair here for Eclipse. Heroic not making it too difficult on him in the clutch.
DZ still able to close things down for themselves. So Heroic, no, man, that was the worst adjective to use there. Heroic half was what I was going to say for DZ.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, where are you going with this?
We'll change it. A good half for DZ ultimately.
Pretty solid. You could say
pretty decent at 5-1. As they take control of every single round after the first 5-round streak. Possibility to go for a straight 7 here too, as obviously they only need 2 more now from the other side. And it is going to be on the defensive end of it. They'll be able to more than likely go into, actually no, not going to go for the lockers hold upstairs. They're also favoring the ventilation start, it seems. So they'll be going down there instead.
Now I'll also get my terrible pun in here. That was a pretty mint half there from DarkZero. Ha ha ha, you like that one, don't you?
Not everyone's going to get that. That's a sneaky one.
Sneaky beaky, my friend. And yeah, it's just DZ's going to head down to vents initially, which kind of threw you for a loop. And honestly, I can't agree with you. I think the big thing about vents is that you really have to be aware of where the positioning of the offense is here, because like we saw in the previous round, they have excuse me, direct access to the site from outside.
To be fair though, the situational awareness from DZ, at least judging from the attacking side, has been second to none here.
Somebody's trying to poison me or something. I don't know what's going on there.
They have been locking down these early rounds every single time. I would say an exception would be that last round there where things got a little bit dodgy, but for the other 4 out of 6 rounds, they had complete control of the map with no chance for Heroic to do anything in response usually.
Well, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with Heroic and just not really being able to fire on all cylinders, because as of right now, Benj is really the only saving grace for them. He's been that one beacon of hope that's gotten some multi-frags in situations where Heroic can definitely, you know, pull out the round, but they haven't been able to build off of those blocks, so it's made it extremely difficult. But as of right now, past that first half, DZ playing things out in a very similar fashion. Canadian, you madman, simply holding the window. That little window break is all he needed, and he'll take away Grizzly. A nice shot here from Uno, though. Hyper will trade it out for Sloth, and Benja comes back. I mean, it's a hell in a cell at the current moment. Eclipse will go down as well by a cross angle here. Gorgona, he snuck inside with the Nook. Might be able to get another one, but no! It's going to be NJR and Hyper that knock it down to Uno. It's back and forth in between these two. Uno trying to make an aggressive play. NJR, he's been slammed. A minute and 50 seconds remain in this 1 versus 1.
Uno versus Hyper, as has been brought down to this pretty much infinite time to play this out too, because of how fast Heroic were able to work their way into the site, mainly because of the advances from Gorgona.
Uno heard that for sure.
He's heard the beepers. He knows the rotates there, but at the same time, Hyper is going to be aware of this situation too. Like, he's even telling us, he's like, I know he's there. I know he's hiding out inside of the check. Uno will just wrap into it. Might even try to go for the play here. Wraps out and he sees him. He's got that confirmation, knows he's nearby. Now that he knows he doesn't have to worry about anything, he's going to fall back. But obviously, Hyper more than likely going to get that cue from the beeper too. Drone goes down. They'll preset this to watch out for the rotates. Unfortunately for Uno here, he still needs to wrap himself back down into the site and find a way to best Hyper. Not going to be able to isolate him so easily. Hyper immediately moving after being spotted out by that drone. Uno goes for the drop, but he's not ready. However, the quick correction from Hyper. Snapshots onto Uno's head and takes him out, giving DZ their second to last round.
What a shot from the birthday boy as Ace tries to drop down the server hatch. DarkZero will put on the clamps and lock this up. Heroic, they look like a shell of themselves in the EUL at the current moment. It's NA dominance, and no, I did not relish in saying that, I promise you. 6-1 right now for DarkZero as they are showing utter dominance at the current moment. A fantastic start by a Canadian here, eventually gets taken down by Uno, but it's the trade game past that that gets DZ and Heroic down into the 1 versus 1, where yet again, they cannot get it done in the clutch.
So things continue to look excellent here for DarkZero as they're only 1 round away from locking it down. Still not feeling the upstairs hold either here, as it's not necessarily a site that they seem to favor. It's going to be Tellers, where they will try to put themselves into a final position to win out this match, and for Heroic, put them against the wall here. We're going to see a slight change up to the lineup, mainly in Gorgona, going back over. Okay, never mind. Was on the Yana as well. We had the map pick up there from Grizzly, but cool, man, a lot of repicks coming in here now. They realize it's a Teller's play. We are going to see Lion brought in, Nomad brought in, and Capitao as well, now locked in for Uno here.
The zero fun lineup. That's what this is. You're not allowed to move. You're not allowed to breathe. Sit in sight. Die. We want this round. Heroic, they're pulling out all the stops here. As you said, the Nomad and Lion especially. Oh, yes, they are. Immediately in and planting, and they've got full site control. DarkZero, you got to do something here. Uno's going to be able to hold this down, not only with a massive capacity on that LMG, John. What the hell was that? Double nitro cell. Things you don't see, but definitely an expected result here in round 8 after what we just saw with Heroic in this opener. Very exciting stuff as Benja will go down in that trade, but Sloth, he's got the sauce at the current moment, and ill-advised nade. There's no way that DarkZero can close it out like this. Uno, he has the Overwatch with this utility. He's going to be able to burn out all of this time and time again, and really no opportunity for them to do anything at the current moment. Uno's down to the smokes.
That's it.
And with 3 seconds remaining,
wait.
Hyper's got to stick it. Somebody has to get on case. He has to hold it from this point on. 1 dead, 2 down, and that's it. Heroic able to pick up the round off of such an aggressive play that Grizzly shoots Gorgona in the back of the head to end it.
Heroic with a massive push for themselves. They're into Tellers, capitalizing on both teams' strategies that they deployed towards in the previous half as well. Heroic played that site in the same exact way with virtually no one defending it on site. They lock in, they realize that DarkZero is probably going to do something similar, and because of that, they push directly in and are able to get free access to the site. It takes DZ far too long to re-rotate from all their positions, as they were probably still setting things up over towards like customs or somewhere upstairs in CCTV, so they had no time to get themselves back in. And as you can see here, by the time they had arrived, Heroic was already set up with this beautiful use of Capitao as well to burn out any potential time DZ would have had to get on the counter defuse.
Yeah, in case you didn't have an opinion about attacker repick yet, well, you probably do now, as it's pretty damn cool, if I do say so myself. Makes it to where the offense has more of a reason to drone things out inside of the prep phase and not be nearly as stingy with their initial information, since inside of the prep phase, outside of reinforcements and some utility usage in certain areas of the map, you're really not going to get anything position-based that you can capitalize on early, unless obviously someone just sticks to a location that you got a drone in, early on, something like CCTV. But past that, a lot of times before attacker repick, nobody except for maybe like one person got a pre-prep drone to initially get them into the building. Everybody just drive their drones back to themselves, pick them up, because those things are worth their weight in gold. But now with attacker repick, you can have major influence inside of the prep phase just by repicking the proper operators.
NJR will falter first this time inside of our second match point round here for DarkZero. NJR going down, and that eliminates the castle. So not the biggest piece of utility being lost, is obviously his more than likely already being deployed, but still that player going down. DZ, as we have already seen from the attacking side, has not been put into a good position to respond to lopsided player situations here. So fighting from the back end of a 4v5 is not what they want to try and play with here to close this one out. Thankfully, if this round continues to go badly for them, they still got 3 other opportunities.
Oh, Pambazoo might be in a poor position here. Impact's out, but he has the potential of another Heroic member to move in via Passport. He's going to shift up to the main hallway instead, and this has been castle barricaded off. Something that a lot of pros were asking for in the border change, and luckily enough for Heroic, they'll be able to find Pambazoo through different means. Nice little angle there. Benja could have potentially been cut off there by Eclipse, but not the aggressive play just yet. Playing this out on time makes it look quite easy, but oh no, the shots go wide. Potential to take somebody down with a nitro cell, but he's just opened up more angles for the opposing members. He's going to take a lot of damage because of that. that, just trying to pick up any frag he potentially can to help DarkZero get out of this hole.
Canadian waiting for these pre-fires to yield something a bit more visible, and he's not going to be able to lock into it, unfortunately. Uno, in fact, picks up another kill against DZ instead, leaving Canadian really a bit alone here in this position. The rotates in from Eclipse, and he's pretty much immediately going to find impact before he goes back inside of the customs desk there. Nicely played by him to save his own teammate's life, get a little bit of pressure off of him.
Nice.
Canadian as well, beautifully timed on the peak to finally catch the pesky Benja that's been causing some serious problems here for DZ. This is now a workable round of gaff there from Eclipse, and just to run into the air jab, and unfortunately doesn't have a good read on Gorgona's position. So he'll take him out finally with that AK on the Nomad, leaving Canadian alone in the site, somewhat surrounded on angles too. He won't make it very far, and Uno finishes off the round for Heroic as they're storming back into this game now in the second half.
Yeah, these last 2 rounds have been nigh impossible for DarkZero, just given the opening that we've seen from Heroic. So much aggression, amazing gunfight potential, especially inside that last round as Uno gets the quick trigger pull and takes down NJR. Heroic now battling back, but they still got a long road ahead of them, John. Yeah, they might be on the golden path, but they're going to need quite a few more bricks to get to the end.
It's really that first kill right now for me that's making a difference for DZ. Because of the kind of slow-natured play and how much they rely on each other, we're seeing a very, very rough round from DZ whenever they go behind and don't really have that aggressive capability to swing in and get someone to pick up like 2 kills. Is there somewhat for Pan, but it wasn't the attacking side. We haven't really seen it echo through just yet, so I agree with this tactical timeout. They need to figure things out now before this gets out of hand here, as they still only need the 1 round to shut it down. They don't want to push this to overtime, where they're potentially going to lose out on some points from this matchup.
Yeah, talk things out. I think that they might need to pull things back just a little bit. Not exactly give Heroic a staging ground inside of the map, but definitely play it a little bit more tight-knit where they're able to potentially trade things out. Because obviously the first defensive round that DarkZero was able to muster was off of the back of Canadians' early aggression, where they were eventually able to get that initial kill, move things over to Break. He gets taken down, but it's still a 4 versus 4. He gets a nice pickup on, I believe, the Finka. So it was just a really good round for DZ from the jump, but these last 2 rounds have been really, really difficult given the circumstances.
Yeah, very much the case. So DZ searching for a solution here. Very, very quiet amongst the roster for DZ. Just trying to get a good look at the faces, see what the attitudes are like. More than anything, just focused, wanting to get themselves over the hill and into the winner's circle for this game here. As keep in mind, we mentioned this earlier too, this is only the first of 2 games that DZ needs to play. Obviously, we'll give them about a 15-minute break or so before they play their next one, but still having to brace themselves immediately to go up against a team that they already struggled against yesterday. Certainly going to be a task they need to prepare for. So a lot of mental strength needed for DZ here today. That's on top of the fact that, too, for anybody who didn't miss it, we did update our rules regarding how we're handling the teams.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that, too.
Mexico City, which does mean that for the next matchup, DarkZero are going to be playing on the live client, the online clients, which is not a situation that DZ is used to playing. DZ plays in the NAL. For those who don't know, the NAL is played entirely on LAN from a venue in Las Vegas.
Yes, indeed.
So the last time that DZ played a competitive match in an online setting was months, if not years ago.
At this point, it's years ago.
I would say early 2021 when we had that that one-off invitational event. I think in like February or March of 2021. That's the last time I can remember it.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember if our quote-unquote NA major was online or not, but I can't exactly remember from the top of my head at the current moment. But either way, yeah, exactly as you said. And just to clarify, just to give you guys the full little breakdown of that, of any team that is playing inside of a matchup is based in Mexico for this event, it will be taking place on the online clients. If both teams are here with us here in Charlotte, they will be on the LAN build, just like DZ and Heroic are here. So for some of those that don't know exactly, it'll be a big difference for the teams in Mexico for their ping. And also, there's a couple of different things that interact a little differently, just utility-wise, between the LAN build and the online build. It's mostly just Sledge's hammer that can be a little finicky sometimes with the LAN build, actually, not the online one. So, but either way, though, shouldn't overall have too much of an effect on anything. So past that, though, about 30 seconds in here into potentially the last round in between these two, unless Heroic have something to say about it.
30 seconds gone from the round here. And as you would generally expect from a game like this, not a whole lot going to build up. Heroic using those Flores drones to be able to knock out some of this utility a bit deeper inside of the vent positions. But aside from that, not a whole lot building up here. That drone's actually probably going to be able to spot out the player just below the hatch drop there inside of vents themselves. And then aside from that, DZ continuing to play a very slow game. As you said, in some extent, pulling this back, but oh, the timing for Sloth is so unfortunate. He unscopes just when the cross comes his way and has missed an opportunity that almost certainly would have led to an opening kill for Heroic again.
This is exactly what I wanted to see from DarkZero. Look at the positioning of Canadian right now. Yes, they did give Heroic a staging ground, but please respect the time bank at the current moment. We're about halfway through the round. This is to be expected. This is very classic Siege, and they found the pick that they so desperately needed. When Heroic actually comes into the building, as we were talking about in the pregame, this is a very congested map. Things get very hot to trot early on, and it already is yet again as Heroic fire off 2 quick kills on the DarkZero members upstairs.
Immediately not only exchanging out their initial loss, but now taking the advantage with a second kill. This is big news for the Heroic fans here, where they still need to win not only this round, but 2 afterwards. They're going to continue to play this cautiously despite having the player advantage. Only taking that upstairs control, still needs to make the transition down onto the first floor. NGR is looking for an opportunity to try and smite one of these players through the floor, and he nearly gets it against Benja, but no, the bars betray him here and do not allow him to get the damage necessary, so Benja will stay in the fight. Only about 10 to 15 damage connecting. Hyper wants to line himself up for something later on in the round. Not going to see him trying to rush out towards this immediately, but for the post plant, if he's still able to maintain this position until later on, he could do some serious work here, should Heroic able to put themselves in a position where they can get a play.
This is an amazing spot for him to be at the current moment. Could potentially waste so much time, and now as the plant's going down, Hyper can also influence this via the cross, but he has to worry about this player outside if he does want to get a little aggressive. The other issue now for DarkZero is that the top control really isn't in their favor. Heroic more than likely holding on to that as they get this plant down, and yes indeed, Sloth will add to the pile, and JR now on the heap of bodies that DarkZero have across this map. Canadian trying to retake upstairs, as obviously this verticality is going to influence this position a lot. A lot of damage though coming in from downstairs, as inevitably he'll be taken down by Benja. Sloth will pick up the last kill, and Heroic are on the warpath to overtime.
Solid round from Heroic. They're catching on to the slower pace play, and more importantly, the fallbacks coming in from DZ. They don't necessarily bait themselves into it. As soon as they notice it after that first player is lost, they course correct pretty much immediately, focus entirely on just that second floor clear where they know there's going to be actual extensions from DZ, committed to positions there, bring it down to the 4v3, and then work the downstairs clear from there. Beautiful adjustment and beautiful strategy from Heroic here, and it's really putting the heat on DZ, especially since they've already used their pause. They're out of lifelines. They've got to bring something to bear here in order to get themselves another round, and they're finally going to bring the upstairs hold in to maybe give them that win.
Maybe, just maybe, but this also could be their last resort at the end of the day. Uno has heated up, as well as Benja and Sloth. Uno catching up to Benja in kills, actually, where he was tied for the bottom there for just a little while, but he's found his mark on the offensive end. It seems like the AK-12 happens to be a favorite of his as he continues to body DarkZero with it time and time again. As for DZ, they found their initial pick inside of that last round, but it just did not go off without a hitch, as Heroic quickly take control of top floor, dust both DZ members, and past that, it's a fairly straightforward affair as DarkZero cannot find any refrags, and there's just too much map control in Heroic's hands at that current moment.
So DZ are going to be, of course, extending their positioning out further into the second floor, but more they did in the previous round. That kind of goes without saying, since we are going to be in the walker's position this time. That does also mean that Heroic need to clear things out a little bit more down below to have those options to reascend through the inside of metal stairs, should they want to use that in order to get access to the site. Still, of course, need to see some mind paid to that CCTV position, and that'll come over the next minute or so. Once Heroic feel confident, they have cleared out the remnants on the first floor here. Panva's position will now be revealed with that drone hopping back in. We're also just going to watch out for further ones. It's 2 free drones going down for him. So already 40% of the drone count gone from Heroic, as 2 additional ones had also been sniped out earlier.
The first minute almost gone. Sloth will hit his mark as Pambazoo goes down. A nice pickup here from Heroic as they'll start off with their own entry kill and don't even need a gun in order to do it. Just a nice, strong arm. So here for DarkZero, now down a man. They need to try and recoup in any way possible, and that's what Hyper's looking for right now. A little bit of an aggressive front here through break room, but does still have the balcony to worry about as he'll look into the ether, not be able to find too much as most of the Heroic bodies are over towards the west side of the map.
Heroic will commit the majority of their force, it seems, to this rappel. over on the west side of the building and start working themselves in. Canadian ready to throw out some aggression on his own regard here, but no, it's just not going to work for anyone except NJR. He picks up a kill, but even he's pretty much immediately exchanged, and it's just so clean from Heroic. DZ tried to bait into a few of these fights, but every single one except the small one from NJR goes the way of Heroic. They are back in this. They have run the gauntlet back from 1 to 5 and are now just a single round away from triggering overtime. What a comeback from Heroic.
So we're going to get DarkZero, or are we going to get DarkZero T? That's the real question. As, I mean, boo, boo, Stokes, boo.
Boo, thumbs down.
But no, dude, I mean, it seems like DarkZero is starting to fall back into very similar pathing as we'd seen prior with this team's history, where we're just back to overtime after overtime with these guys. So hopefully they're able to close it out and claim a multitude of points here, because otherwise Heroic will at least guarantee themselves one if they're able to get this next round.
And they have gone down, it looks like, over into, I believe that's Vents they've gone for this round here. I'll confirm that in a second.
I actually think it's Customs.
Oh, wow. All right, so a big gamble from DarkZero then going into this
gamble,
round.
honestly.
They're going to be relying heavily on that extension of the CCTV, as well as just the roaming positions in general to kind of keep Heroic at bay, bring them into an uncomfortable time position where they're going to flood into the site, a site which is very open for the taking in a lot of extents, but at the same time, if you're not able to properly drone it out or gather what the setup looks like, you could walk into a trap at the end of the day here. But that's the problem for TZ. Heroic has seemingly had really no problem clearing these types of setups out with relative ease, as we just saw in the last round too. So this is not necessarily a winning changeup for DZ. Something else will have to come to bear here in order to allow them to win it.
Yeah, there's so many different ways that Heroic can play this out, and a multitude of different levels, even down to their pacing. I mean, that last round, very, very calculated, very slow moving, you know, not boiling over at all. Just an initial frag grenade, and then DarkZero have to try and make a move, and they lose 3 bodies because of it. It's just very difficult for them, but Heroic, cool as a cucumber, current moment. See if they can continue this reign of terror over DarkZero's defensive end. The reinforcement here being managed by NJR. Just know that somebody is indeed on rappel, looking to see if they want to continue to peek into this, a potential freebie for them, but also the yellow ping coming through. Grizzly aware that more than likely they're going to attempt to impact trick this, and that's exactly why NJR is here. Impact out, and it will not get rid of that exothermic. That was a beautiful reposition there by Grizzly, and more than likely a fantastic call by his teammates to try and assist in that situation.
Yeah, once again, the situational awareness making huge strides forward for both teams here. Heroic on the attack and DarkZero the same in the first half as they continue to make some very smart changes.
NJR!
Access. NJR is going to get himself into the fray, though, from that defensive end of things, still fighting off against that jail breach, by the way. He'll take down Sloth, arguably one of the most impactful players we've seen in this game from Heroic, but there's others that have stepped up, like Benja, like Uno, and they can still make up the difference here, as they've just done to re-equalize us down to a 4v4.
Will be an air jab here on the stock window. Heroic, they've got to find a foothold in order to try and build some staging ground against this DZ onslaught, as they finally found some footing. Uno's going to move in on Passport. They've got the cross, but Uno's been downed outside, and he's dead. Hyper's got the verticality. He's not paying attention to the ceiling, and on a map like this, that is more than likely the most hostile area to be. And now the cross here from Heroic. They have to try and battle back, but Canadian shuts down Gorgon. It's a 4 versus 2. Heroic have got to pick this up, but they simply cannot unless Grizzly has something to say about it. It's a 2K for him. Smoke out here to try and assist with these crosses. Has a bulletproof right in front of his vision. Not able to get the motherboard there. Finally able to tag it up and destroy that camera, but more than likely looking to see if he can potentially get a plant down here. Won't be over to overheal himself. Could fake this out and see if he can potentially get a DZ member to swing. That's exactly what he'll attempt to do. Procs the beepers. Might be faking this plant just again. You can see all of those yellow pings coming through as Heroic try and get out of this round. Another shot, and he'll take down Canadian, but where's Pambazoo? It's a triple. He's got the pistol out. 15 seconds remaining. Grizzly, it's all down to you. Yes, the name of the team is Heroic, but you're going to have to make some heroic plays here. He fakes the case once again. Audio cues. That's all he's listening for. He knows the players around the area. It's a shot from Pambazoo. DarkZero shut it down in regulation after such a hard-fought round from Grizzly.
That is such a heartbreaker for Heroic as well. That's a tilter if I've ever seen one. Heroic bringing it all the way back. So many rounds going into their favor. Such a solid number of those rounds, too, being great adjustments from them, change-ups just to get over the hill and into a winning position for that round. But unfortunately, it takes us back to the first half, where unfortunately they just weren't able to bring anything to bear on their own defensive side. And as a result of that, fell down 1-5, giving them far too much of a deficit to come back from, as we've seen. DZ had those 4 to 5 rounds in a row to win out just a single one, and they finally do it. Unfortunately for Heroic, on the very last one.
Yeah, that was an extremely offender-sided border, but it's to be expected on a map like that. And, I mean, you have to give it to both teams. I think we saw some very stellar gameplay when it came to that side, but those defenses, man, just nobody could get it going. It was always extremely tight-knit, nobody really being able to just get one over on the other team, like, oh yeah, we had 4 bodies up. It's really nitty-gritty, down to the wire for a lot of those instances.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, we'll be breaking this game down for you. Back once again here at the Charlotte Major, ladies and gentlemen. Just saw DarkZero giving themselves a heartbreak victory against Heroic. Heroic running a massive comeback down from 1-5 after their defensive half on border, bringing it all the way back to 6-5, only to drop that last round, giving it to DZ 7-5 at the end of the day here. So they will be taking the full 3 points from that matchup there, inserting themselves that much further forward towards the playoffs.
Yeah, quite a bit of cannon fodder coming from the offensive side for both of these teams. No one really able to muster anything on defense that was surmountable, but finally DZ have something at the very tail end of the round, and it takes yet another 1v1 in order to decide it. It seemed like it was just time and time again that those situations, if Heroic even got half of them, they could more than likely have won the game, but it just seems that DZ has the clutch gene in comparison. And, well, as we roll these highlights, John, how are you feeling about this matchup?
I mean, pretty much, as you said, it really came down to who was able to get themselves ahead early on in the round because of how teeter-tottery the individual kill sequences were on the round. You're going to see this here on our feed, just constant streams of blue, suddenly to orange, suddenly to blue again here, always going back and forth and almost always ending in some form of 1v2, 1v1, something very close. We very rarely had any straight-up shutdown round rounds, maybe 1 or 2 of them at most here. Both of these teams playing their hearts out, but ultimately, DZ just able to get that advantage early on in the round far too many times, especially inside the first half after they faltered themselves in the initial round. They took complete control from that point forward and had a fairly easy time despite the comeback because of the lead they built themselves.
I think it's a fantastic warm-up here for DarkZero coming into this next matchup as well against W7M. It was a very aggressive map from both teams, and going up against a team that they already lost to, this is definitely going to be something that they're looking to right here in a handful of minutes.
Nice birthday present as well for Hyper once again, as we'll mention that too. Make sure to wish him a happy birthday on social media as we get the stats in front of us here. Panba topping out the charts at the moment for DZ at 12 and 7, with Canadian close behind at 9 and 11. Meanwhile, over on the side of Heroic, and I mean, this just shows you how close the matchup was, right? Top 3 players on Heroic have more kills than the top 3 players on DZ. 13, 10, and 10 for Benja, Uno, and Sloth, respectively.
Yeah, but don't forget about the dead heat that they have inside of opening kills as well. Both of them having 6. It was so tight-knit in between these two, and I mean, you can just see the utter dominance from the offensive side for both of these squads. It's extremely unfortunate that no one could really get their defensive legs under them, but that is going to give DarkZero the victory. Heroic, a lot to think about after that matchup, but they're not out of the thick of it yet today.
Yeah, Heroic certainly shouldn't be ashamed of this matchup, I would say. Playing their hearts out to such a close extent.
Probably mad about the defensive end a little bit, but
I'd be mad running like 4 to 5 rounds straight and then losing 7-5-2. Like, that part I'd be mad about. There's a lot they can learn from this. They can look at the little mistakes they made, the little extensions where they pushed out too far maybe or got a little bit too aggressive, and can look back at that and make course correction for, obviously, their games later today, and of course, day 3 in the groups too, as they try to still surge forward to get into the playoffs here. There is time to fix this, and Heroic is not looking bad by any extent, so I still think that there is a possibility where we see them sneak through. DZ, in the meanwhile, is definitely looking intense. They need to stay that way, as they've got another matchup coming up in just a few minutes also. W7M is going to be their next opponent, and as we said before, already losing to them yesterday is going to put DarkZero into a particularly awkward situation now for this next matchup.
Yo, absolutely the case. You know, it's going to be a pretty interesting one, as well as, well, we'll tell you guys this once again, because we more than likely have some new viewers for the W7M game. Just to let you guys know, things have been changed when it comes to how we are working things here for this LAN. So if any of the teams that are currently in Mexico, i.e. W7M, then we'll be playing on the online client. If both of the teams that are playing inside of the matchup are here in Charlotte, we'll be using the LAN client. So this next game for DarkZero will be an online game.
We're going to take a short break, ladies and gentlemen. We'll give DZ, of course, a few minutes to kind of cool off after their first match, and more importantly, get themselves adjusted to the online client. And then once they are ready, we'll be coming back to you with the second match of the day between DarkZero and W7M.